Hello and welcome to Access Television. I'm Molly Caron. On this episode, we will bring you a cross-section of stories from our community that will hopefully resonate with you as we all grapple with leadership and education and self-governance and prioritizing environment over economy. We are going to bring you stories of little oil spills and power grabs.
Hi, I'm Narges Mowlaee. Today we'll have a conversation with Hereditary Chief Bill Wilson, who is here with us talking on Native self-governance.
We're going to take your attention upstream to the Peace River Valley, where landowners, First Nations, and all types agree that Site C doesn't have a good enough reason to be.
Hot Topics will cover a bunch of issues, including social housing,
adult education,
the transportation referendum,
and how a little messy oil spill has activated many.
And of course, we're going to take a look at the problems we may have with our appliances, which is always helpful.
Yes, and we'll take you wildcrafting with our guest Cece Wyss and her daughter, who have brought medicinals and teas to soothe our worries.
First, Gunargie O'Sullivan in a conversation with Hereditary Chief Bill Wilson, whom we are privileged to have on our show today. He is a true leader who's been pushing for Native rights on all levels since the 70s. Here he is in a conversation with Gunargie.
Today I have Hemads in the house. He is the chief who is always there to help. Bill Wilson from the Kwakwaka'wakw Nation. How are you today?
I'm fine, thank you.
I am too. I'm really glad to have you here on the set with me. And I wanted to let the listeners know and the audience know that Hereditary Chief Bill Wilson is one of the people one of the chiefs and our leaders who developed the BC Treaty process. And we're going to be talking about Christy Clark's decision not to reappoint a treaty commissioner and self-governance. Let's start off with the development of the BC Treaty process.
Well, I think the audience should know, as you probably do, that the Indian land claims in the province of British Columbia have been a rallying call since contact. Once we were forced off the land by government and industry and fishing and other resources, the Aboriginal people organized, even though it was against the law at the time to do so, to pursue the land claims issue. Even the Nisga's, for example, went to England before the turn of the century to seek an audience with the Crown to declare their title to the land. So this struggle has gone on since shortly after contact. I mean, our people assisted the non-Indian people who stumbled ashore here, wouldn't have survived had we not been hospitable, and then they treated us as savages, as second-class citizens, and did all the other things which you're very aware of. So, but the Indian people, despite the laws, the potlatch laws and everything else that was proclaimed to prohibit them from organizing themselves, organized themselves under the Native Brotherhood of British Columbia, and they continually struggled. And when I was a little kid, like 6, 7 years old, I used to go to Brotherhood meetings. They were the longest Indian organization surviving in this country, and their purpose was land claims, land claims, land claims. That's what you heard from Gosnell, Calder, all the great leaders. It was always about reclaiming our title to the land, but more importantly, reclaiming our access to renewable natural resources. Now, out of that came many Indian organizations, including the North American Indian Brotherhood in the interior, the Southern Vancouver Island Tribal Council, the interior tribes, the Brotherhood, the Nisga'a Tribal Council, and finally they amalgamated in 1969 in Kamloops, 5 of them, to form the Union of BC Indian Chiefs, which sole purpose was the pursuit of land claims, the just resolution of the outstanding grievance known as Aboriginal title and treaty rights. Well, you know, that went south for the winter very quickly because it got co-opted by the Department of Indian Affairs. So other organizations like the Aboriginal Council and the Congress and eventually the Summit emerged, and I was fortunate enough to be the president of the Congress and the Summit. And we were able to convince 2 of the most right-wing conservative governments you could imagine, Van der Zams and Mulroney's, that they should form a commission that would deal with the outstanding grievance. But it wasn't due to philanthropy on their part or goodwill on their part. We had convinced the business community in the province of British Columbia and nationally that if you didn't settle land claims, the title to the land would be in jeopardy, and you would not be able to develop it because it would not be clear who owned it. And that was really the binding agreement. The Mineral Council, the Mining Council under Tom Waterland and a few other Aboriginal people and ourselves, we went to Vanderzam and told him, you want campaign funds for the next election? You better deal with the land claims issue. Because that's the only thing they listen to is political pressure, or in that case it was intimidation. So the Business Council of British Columbia and other people deserve a great deal of pressure or credit, along with the Aboriginal people, for forcing the government, the federal government and the provincial government, to come together and say, okay, let's create a commission. So they did. And they came up with a commission that was composed of 19 principles. Level playing field was one of them, tripartite, equal partners. And then that was about the same time that I got impeached because they didn't like me for some reason. And I went away to Ottawa for a couple of years, and I came back, and sadly, I don't know what happened. The Congress had been changed with different leadership to the summit. And then when I came back, they had negotiated over a period of about 6 months to a year the agreement in regard to Aboriginal Title Commission. And when I negotiated with Mulroney and Vanderzam, two actually good guys, I didn't mind them at all, they agreed that we would have 10% or 90% loans or grants, and 10% loans. All right, and then the 19 principles would be there on the table, they all would be lived up to, and it would be a level playing field with all three partners being equal. When I came back from Ottawa 2 years later, somebody had negotiated just the opposite. So instead of grants, just about all of it became loans. So 80% of it now is loans. Money, something like, I don't know, $6 billion borrowed by the Indians to pursue the claim.
That has to be repaid, right?
That is supposed to be repaid. And the other thing is that the Department of Indian Affairs took over the process, thanks to what I consider to be weak Indian leadership and complete lack of information on the part of the province. The province never knew what was going on in this process. Still does not know what's going on in this process. And the fact is that the Department of Indian Affairs simply created out of the Department of Indian Affairs their treaty people, who were all former Department of Indian Affairs employees, who were all trained in intimidating and putting Aboriginal people down. They controlled the pre-treaty process. And then not what you see, sadly, now after, I don't know, 20 years or whatever it is, lawyers are the only ones that made any money. And consultants, and many unequipped Indian chiefs who thought they were negotiators. So it's a huge business with no product. Now there's 5 things. The Nisga'a agreement, you've got to remember, was negotiated outside the treaty. All right, so this industry has been going on, this suffering industry is going on for so long now, and people have made millions and millions and millions of dollars out of this process, and the conditions of Aboriginal people, which was supposed to be improved by the process, has not changed one iota. In fact, it's gotten worse.
That's why
now we're at the present day, and Christy Clark thinking that, you know, if I can look fiscally conservative, you know, then I can intimidate Indians into submitting to our minimal demands or our minimal requests. And the reality is that what she's done is simply violated a sacred trust. It was agreed 3 equal parties, level playing field, principles, which kind of new to, I guess, people who were in politics. But the reality is now that the summit has laid down for it. The Indian leadership has laid down for it. The federal government loves it because now they know it's in disarray. They had no intention of resigning or signing treaties or allowing the land to take place in terms of transfer. And that's the biggest problem, is that, you know, when we talk about self-governance, if you don't have control of land and resources on a renewable natural resource basis, you're a slave to the government. And that's exactly where they want to keep us.
And is that where we're at?
That's exactly where we're at. That's where we've been at for almost 50, 60 years in this province. Federally, the Department of Indian Affairs, the biggest farce that ever came down the road. I mean, what we have are Indian organizations funded by the federal government, people funded by the federal government. Now, if I was paying you $100,000 a year, who would you answer to? Probably me, with all due respect. I mean, I don't mean to begrudge or to besmirch your character, but the reality is that most Aboriginal groups in the province of British Columbia are dependent upon handouts from the Department of Indian Affairs. The Department of Indian Affairs created the treaty process corruption, Now, our ideas, Miles Richardson and I and a few of the other leaders that stayed to the end to negotiate it, had the idea that we could have access, we'll negotiate access to renewable natural resources to fuel our own self-government, to make decisions for ourselves, to be citizens of the province of British Columbia. That dream went out the window as soon as the lawyers and consultants and some inept Aboriginal leaders got their foot in the door. And we're talking huge money. I mean, huge money.
So $600 million later, First Nations people have still yet to benefit, while governments and lawyers and others have benefited from this
And the
money.
Treaty Commission. I mean, you talk about Treaty Commissioners. The Treaty Commissioners are living high off the hog. I mean, and I don't begrudge it if they were doing work. I have no problem with people getting paid, provided they produce results. So if I give you a job and you're here, at the end of the day, you're over here where you're supposed to be, you've done your job. But if you're still over here, you should never get paid. And I'm afraid that's what the Treaty Commission is about. Okay. It was supposed to be the treaty, the keeper of the process. It was supposed to supervise all of this, but they allowed all of this to go on. And what they became was simply a police dog watchman for the Department of Indian Affairs. The Department of Indian Affairs controls all of this. Christy Clark does not have a clue what's going on, but it looked like a good soundbite, and she's always there for one of those.
So we only have less than 2 minutes to go. Christy Clark's decision to not appoint a new treaty commissioner, is that a good idea or a bad idea? And where do we go from here?
Well, she might have stumbled on a good idea. Even blind squirrels find a nut sometimes, I mean, but the fact is that what is the summit going to do about it? If I was a summit leader, and if I was an honest federal leader, I don't know where you'll find one of those either, I would demand that the tripartite arrangement of equivalent discussion take place. And I would probably get rid of some of the treaty commissioners, even though one has resigned and left. But I mean, the reality is that unless you tell the government, the federal government, to get rid of it, let's get rid of the Department of Indian Affairs from this process. Let's make it a tripartite process that will create a resolution of land claims and outstanding grievances of the province of British Columbia. We're going to be tied up in the court cases forever. I mean, I wish I wasn't 71. I wish I was practicing law, because I would be taking a whole lot of people to court and stopping development. Not that I advocate that, but that's the reality of the constitutional developments and the court cases and all the things that have taken place to date. Indian people are required to consent. We don't have the right of refusal, but we have to have consent. The industries have to have consent. So Christy Clark has made a huge mistake. But it's one that's been compounded by the NDP government. Mike Harcourt's government was no better. None of the other governments have been any better. And the reality is now we have a huge mess where the title to the land in the province of British Columbia, including maybe the homes upon which you're sitting, is still subject to Aboriginal title and land claims.
You heard it here on Access TV, Hereditary Chief Bill Wilson.
Wow, well, I've been schooled, you've been schooled. Gratitude to Chief Wilson for coming in and explaining to us the failed treaty process and how, if you follow the money, it really does line the pockets of lawyers. I believe the Treaty Commission can do much better, and Chief Bill Wilson will be back to educate us further.
Excellent. Well, on March 28th, a Keep the Peace fundraiser was held at the Wyss Hall in Vancouver to show the support for protection of the beautiful Peace River Valley. Holly Arntzen, who's a songwriter and actor and brought all the talent together for this event, is here in conversation with Molly Caron.
Well, hello. I'm going to take your attention upstream, way upstream, to the center of our fair province, to the Peace River Valley. I was recently at a fundraiser called Keep the Peace, and it had packed entertainment and talent and speakers. And one of the entertainers and organizers was Holly Arntzen, my guest today. Holly was on stage with the Wilds, Kevin Wright. She shared the stage with the Boom Booms and Art Napoleon. And it was a party with a purpose. Let's begin there. Why did your attention go to the Peace River, Holly?
Just before I go there, I just want to say, and Jason Buey Band too.
And
the fourth musician.
Buey, he was awesome.
Kevin Wright and I produce Voices of Nature school music programs, and we did a couple of those. We went up to Fort St. John twice. on 2 occasions. And we went out to the farm of Ken and Arlene Boone, and their farmland is located right in the area that's going to get flooded should this proposed dam go through. So I became personally connected to the place and the people. And when I heard that the government had given their approval late last year, I just strongly felt we have to do something. We have to run the flag up the flagpole, especially in this part of the world, here in Vancouver, the Lower Mainland, where we consume so many of the resources that come from the land. And the Peace River country is a huge benefactor. So that's why we just decided to do the event.
Yeah, I'm learning more about it because of the social media around Site C Dam and the people who have for 40 years been trying to take it off the table. And yet it's back up on the table as a possibility. Despite all the studies that have said, not such a good idea, we don't even really need that much power, it's pretty expensive, and what about alternative energy? Despite all of the common sense behind that, it's on the table again. So there's a court case on April 20th with at least 6 different parties, and one of which is the landowners who are trying to get it off the table for good.
There's I believe there are 6 First Nations court cases launching, and the landowners are doing their own court case.
Yeah.
So this particular event was to raise money for their court case. But there's a suite of 7 of them, and the landowners' court case starts up on April 20th. So another purpose for the event was to say to people, pay attention to this. This is coming, and these court cases are the best and possibly the last chance to stop this proposed dam. So the people who can go and witness in the courtroom are welcome to do that. That's important, and to really pay attention to the underlying issues.
Yeah. And the underlying issues are that there's a disappearing agricultural land in our province, and there are blatant people ignoring the First Nations inherent treaty rights around how they extract and flood. So you're bringing that to people's attention through music. Why does music solve problems?
Well, I love to think it solved it, but what music does, that nothing else does, is it speaks to our hearts.
Yeah.
These issues around the Peace River Valley are things that ultimately most of us care very deeply about, and yet we don't hear enough about why it's important. And music connects us. Music speaks to our emotions and to the things deep within us, and it causes a different kind of conversation to take place. That's what I find. You know, I've done lots of situations where issues are being discussed, and you throw a song into the mix, and you come out the other side, and you're thinking a little differently. And in this case, music, I mean, there has been lots of speaking and writing, and there needs to be something more about the Peace River Valley to engage people, and I think music is part of that mix.
Okay. So what is it that you've particularly taken on sort of personifying water in a lot of your songs?
Yeah.
And Up Your Watershed is the one that I really like. It's a rock and roll hit. But you are almost taking back the power of language and putting it into water. Since you've been singing since the 70s, you've been the Claquit and all the way through. How have you noticed the activism has changed briefly in that time? I mean, that's a long span to view. How have activists changed?
I'd have trouble answering that succinctly in the time I have right now.
Okay.
What I have noticed is that's changed is that the response is changing. I find, 20 years ago, climate change was being mentioned, but it was really like a foreign topic to people, the general public. Similarly with the Peace River Valley and the proposed Site C Dam, it's an issue now that people they're aware of why it's important to think about it. When you mention these things, climate change or our ability to adapt to what climate change is bringing us, there's a much more, people, I guess, they're just more aware. That's what I find.
Yeah.
It's not so much of an argument anymore. And so I think
There's more solidarity.
There's more awareness, and I think what activism has accomplished is sort of raising that level of awareness in the public.
So Holly Arntzen, the founder of the Artist Response Team, it's been an honor to have you here today, and let's keep the peace And this dam that's looking for a reason, the people see no reason for this dam.
No damn way.
Artistresponseteam.com, that's where you'll find the music of Holly Arntzen, Kevin Wright, and the Wilds. They are rocking it out to songs about water and beyond. Check them out.
Next up is Hot Topics with Gary and Gunargie.
Welcome to Access Television. I'm Gary Olver, and I'm sitting with Gunargie O'Sullivan.
Yes, and today on Hot Topics, we'll be discussing Don Larson and the Fraser Park and, the Fraser River Park, plus versesfestival.ca, and also the Kwantlen response to the Wanik tribe, and much, much more. Right now, let's go to Don Larson. Hello, Don Larson. You're on Access TV. How are you?
Oh, hello, Access TV.
Hi. So give us an update on the Fraser Park River and how is it going on? Are we moving forward with the park? Is there hope that the park is going to happen?
Yeah, good question. We're doing a small event on Saturday, the 18th of April, 11 a.m. to noon at the foot of Cambie. If you go down the Canada line and stop at the Marine Gateway Station, you can find us at 11 a.m. We're going to walk down to the river, and Terry Slack, who's an environmentalist and fisherman on the Fraser River, is going to talk about the disappearing Ooligan fish, the Ooligan Run on the north arm of the Fraser, which actually did go by the north arm of the Fraser and is kind of disappearing. So he's going to talk a bit about that, and I'm going to talk a little bit about how we are as far as getting a park, which I don't know. I mean, the mayor is very quiet, and TransLink is also very, very quiet. We need a land deal signed.
So how can people support your efforts to get the Fraser Park happening? Is there an email and a contact information that they can...
Yeah, we got something called Marpole River Park.com.
Okay.
And so, yeah, and Lucas Meyer's YouTube thing is on there, which we did about a year and a quarter ago.
Okay.
So, yeah, you can see stuff like that. You can see a few pictures of what's there now, which is 20-plus acres of cement wasteland, concrete wasteland. We like to see a lot of trees and nature to come back to what was a mill site. A lumber mill site, which disappeared about 13 years ago. So that property has been sitting there kind of ugly for 13 years, and we want to see a park there because that whole area is getting an awful lot of high density right now.
Okay, Don, that's about all the time we have, but I would like to remind the audience members of Access TV that you can check out Don Larson on www.coopradio.org or 100.5 FM CFRO every second Monday between 4 o'clock and 5 to find out more information about the Fraser River Park. Thank you, Don Larson.
Thanks, Gunargie.
Okay, so another thing that we'd like to touch on is the recent spill that happened at English Bay.
Yeah. Don was just talking about something that had to do with nature there, and I just thought about that. It was, I think, didn't they have it was a 12-hour response time, wasn't it?
Well, they failed to respond.
Yeah, they failed to respond after 12 hours. Yeah, you know what I mean? And, I think if they had a Coast Guard station right down in English Bay like they used to, I think they would have had a more quicker reaction time on pulling out a boom, right?
Like 6 minutes as opposed to 6 hours response time.
Yeah, apparently the other Coast Guard station came from Richmond. They responded from Richmond, right?
Yeah.
So that was just too long for a spill.
And and then a lot of the people from the community have taken it upon themselves to clean up the beaches themselves. They've gone out and gotten rakes and dustpans and garbage bags. They even went to the Sylvia Hotel to get supplies so that they could clean up the beach themselves. They're actually putting their lives at risk as we speak.
They are. And I heard there's a lot of wildlife that actually were damaged and were, birds and stuff that were caked in oil.
Yeah,
so.
True. And there's a petition that is out there that is they're calling out to various, to the government leaders. It's an emergency to have the Coast Guard reappointed, as well as to not allow more tankers into the waters.
I think that's kind of, one of the concerns of a lot of people, right? It's like if they had a slow response time for a spill like this, then what would happen if, they were filling up tankers right in our bay, so.
Right. So you can look out for this petition online, and you can go to Kelly White's website. There's a Facebook page if you'd like to support efforts to clean up the spill. The city of Vancouver is actually calling out to the public if you'd like to go down and volunteer to help clean up.
Yeah, cool.
Yeah. And don't forget about the versesfestival.ca, www.versesfestival.ca. I'm Gunargie O'Sullivan and Gary Olver.
Yeah, and remember the Bill Reid.
Oh, yeah.
We have was it the Bill Reid show?
Yeah.
Was it the treasure boxes, right?
Yeah, a box of treasures.
That's right, box of treasures.
Gifts from the supernatural, and that's at 639 Homer Street, and that will be happening until September. Don't miss it.
And that was Hot Topics on today's show on Access Television.
Well, Access TV has been pointing its lens at the issue of housing, and now we bring you an update from Wilson Mendez on the SRO Alliance.
An SRO is basically just a single room. My room is 10 by 10, and it's one of the smallest rooms in the building. I am one of the 4 organizers of this SRO convention that was held recently here in Vancouver. The purpose behind the SRO convention is to educate people about their rights when it comes to living in SROs. A lot of the tenants don't realize that they have rights, and there are options available for them, and they just don't know what they are. Landlords are not telling them what their rights are, and they're left in the dark. The idea of the SRO convention came from a fellow by the name of Richard Marquez. Richard lived in San Francisco at one time. They actually had the same problems that we are now addressing today in the city of Vancouver. Richard living in Vancouver and provided us with a lot of support and input. We had a really great turnout, approximately 200 people, 30 volunteers that were homeless, volunteers that lived in SROs. We had 8 workshops throughout the day. One of the workshops was done by the city inspectors and how to make complaints about the landlords to the city and the process involved in that. A second workshop, we had community lawyers involved in this one, and they informed the tenants about their rights. The third workshop we had was on tenants' rights, done by Chanel. It was done in Chinese to address Chinese people in our community. Our fourth workshop was on bed bugs and getting rid of bed bugs, and that workshop was done by John. The fifth workshop was accessing services in the community, and the sixth workshop was the Aboriginal Women's Talking Circle, and the seventh workshop we did was on stories by people from the tent city. The eighth workshop was an art workshop on displacement. The highlight of the day was a Crummiest Cockroach Hotel contest, in which 325 tenants voted on their crummiest hotel. The crummiest hotel was the Balmoral Hotel, believe it or not. After the contest, there was a march. Mostly tenants marched from the conference itself to deliver the trophy to the crummiest hotel. The media was present, and they followed the march all the way to the hotel, the deliverance of the trophy to the owner of the Balmoral Hotel. The media played a very important role because the media helped to bring the awareness and attention to the problem of homelessness in the downtown east side to the broader community at large. The next step is to set up a SRO collaborative, just like they did in San Francisco. Part of that first step is that we're going to be finding reps from various SRO hotels. We want those reps to be trained around tenants' rights, and we want them We want them to set the agenda for further campaigns. Also, we plan on all the Chinese youth in the community and addressing these issues. We are also going to take the Aboriginal approach and bring this issue to Aboriginal organizations in the community, as well as bands in and around Vancouver. Also, we'd like to get the Native Aboriginal women involved in this issue as well. We also hope that the collaborative enforce the bylaws in the worst downtown east side hotels and stop the rent evictions. We want to have campaigns like they did in San Francisco, getting mailboxes for everyone, redoing the wiring in all the old hotels, replacing all the old elevators that don't work, stopping the illegal visitor fees, and getting more social housing to replace the single rooms. All this stuff needs to be done, and we need to get onto it. And we're going to do this together.
Another story we've been following with the transit referendum. Here's LJ Meijer with the yes and no side of this debate.
It is obvious that Vancouver needs to improve transit and reduce traffic. But do we support a new sales tax dedicated to the Mayor's transportation and transit plan? A recent poll showed that 61% of voters do not. I'm LJ Meijer. This report looks at what is being proposed and some issues around it. There are a mind-boggling number of improvements in this plan. First, the plan extends the Millennium Line from the VCC Clark Station to Arbutus Street. There are 11 new B-Line rapid bus routes and new light rail lines for Surrey and Langley. The plan also increases the capacity of the existing SkyTrain and West Coast Express. But the plan doesn't stop there. 400 new buses will be added. There will be a 25% increase in bus service across the region, 80% more night buses, 50% more C-bus service, and 30% more handy-dart service. Bus wait times will be reduced to 15 minutes or better 7 days a week, and there will be more frequent service at peak hours as well. There will also be new bus services to new and growing neighborhoods. But the plan does more than just increase transit. It also proposes 2,700 kilometers of bikeways, including 300 kilometers of fully traffic-separated bicycle paths. The plan will also improve walking or waiting facilities at or near transit stops, add new bus shelters, and expand some SkyTrain stations. The plan will also upgrade about 2,300 lane kilometers of roads and replace the old Petula Bridge with a new 4-lane bridge. Some things that are not in the plan are the Evergreen Line and the new bridge to replace the old George Massey Tunnel. Whether the transit referendum passes or not, these will be going ahead separately. So where is the money coming from? The province and the federal government will be kicking in about 2/3 of the money, and increased ridership and tolls will bring in another $500 million. However, there will still be a shortfall which will require a new revenue source. The Mayor's plan asked that the carbon tax be used to fund transit. However, the province said no, so the referendum proposes a 0.5% increase in the sales tax to fund this shortfall. The transit referendum has some strong opposition. An Angus Reid poll revealed that many voters do not trust TransLink with their money.
Well, it's a regressive tax because it's a sales tax, and sales tax in this way affects people of low income more than they would affect people otherwise. So those who are being supposedly served by this tax are the ones going to be hit the hardest.
Well, I'm going to be voting yes. I think a lot of progressives in particular wrestle with the impact of that. A sales tax in and of itself is what we call regressive, meaning lower income people pay more as a share of their income. But the thing is, you can't look at a tax just based on how we're collecting the money. It also matters what we spend it on. And in this case, because transit is of particular benefit to low income people who more often rely on transit, I would say that the overall outcome is actually progressive.
But a quarter of the budget from this plebiscite will go to the Broadway line, right? So it's sucking in most of that money. That money can be better spent into more buses, more transit. The problem with concentrating this plan on the Broadway line is it's going to spur development all across Broadway, which will lose social housing and create more upscale housing, so rents will go up and people will lose their low-income housing. So overall, this plan is not a good plan for the poor because it's going to increase paying a sales tax, which they will be hit by, and they will lose housing and our rents will go up. So this whole plan really supports developers.
To the extent that there's a small regressive impact for some people, the province could easily fix that. They could increase the PST credit. They could increase the low-income carbon tax credit. That they've already got a system set up to do that, where they could just increase the checks that go to low-income households. Best of all, they could take the UPass, which currently goes to post-secondary students, and extend it to low-income households. They could increase the age at which children travel for free. So there's any number of things that the province could and should do, and I think we should advocate for, that would dispense with this concern.
Yeah.
There's definitely developers who benefit from high-speed rail lines in whatever form and along the nubs of those routes. And I think that all levels of government need to figure out how those developments that benefit from it should pay their fair share into it. We need to figure out how to structure development fees and property taxes in a way that fully captures the rents as they should from those who benefit. But the fact that it will result in some changes to neighborhoods and some increases in density, from a climate point of view, I think that has to happen, actually.
If the referendum does not pass, the TransLink 2014 base plan describes the current plan going forward for the next 3 years and gives a 7-year outlook after that. The plan starts by describing how TransLink has been increasing efficiency, reducing costs per passenger, and cutting handy-dart. Going forward, the plan has no new bus service hours, SkyTrain and West Coast Express maintained at 2013 levels, $299 million budgeted to repair the old Patella Bridge, and a table of fare increases for 2015 and 2016.
I get why a lot of people are pissed off with TransLink and pissed off at the province. And there's that impulse to vote no, to spite them all. I think that will feel great for 5 minutes, and then we would spend 10 years sitting in traffic and waiting for buses and realizing that we've missed an opportunity to invest in major expansions to service that we need.
Well, it's the responsibility of the provincial government to fund TransLink and to fund transportation. They've just announced major expansion to highways, so they have money for highways, but they don't have money for transit. Well, it's a non-binding plebiscite, right, this vote, and if no outcome comes, I don't think it's doom or gloom. It means that we don't support this specific plan.
Next, we bring you a report from the field, courtesy of Mark Freeman and Douglas H. They attended a rally for adult education on March 5th, where students expressed the importance of accessibility to public education.
So we decided to come together. We said we need to talk about this, we need to make our voices heard, and we know there are many people.
Well, this is an important forum to speak out against the cuts that this government is making in regards to adult basic education.
I came here as a young bride, and I had no education background. Unfortunately, I couldn't finish my grade 12 in high school because I got pregnant on my first child, my son, Fahim. So the school asked me to go to adult school education to continue with my upgrading.
I came to Canada almost a year ago. I was discriminated against my religion in my country, and I was deprived from having a higher education.
I came here from a very small town in the Okanagan. There were not a lot of opportunities for me, no educational opportunities, certainly no job opportunities, so I took a chance. I came down here to Vancouver. I didn't know anyone, and I didn't really have a lot of support, but I figured, hey, I can probably get a job here. And I kind of could. I eked by on minimum wage jobs, scraping together. Gosh, I remember one time my earnings for 1 month were all of $500. I look back on it now and I think, how did I ever live on that?
I couldn't finish it because I was a full-time mother and I had to stay at home with my child. But I had a tutor who was coming home to help me how to read and write in English. And that was also provided from VCC for me, from Homefront Learning Center.
Luckily, I learned about the Adult Basic Education program at Vancouver Community College. They were only going to charge me $20 and I could go back and get all the prereqs that would be the stepping stone to being where I wanted to be.
My level increased and I went to VCC. Where I'm right now, I'm taking Law 12 and Psychology 12 and I'm almost finishing my grade 12. And that's the only reason.
I love to become a doctor. I'm trying my best in order to be successful, to get into medical school.
And I'm very happy to say that because of that program, I was able to get the prereqs to become a licensed practical nurse.
However, I'm extremely concerned that cutting the funding to adult education probably will mean that we have to give up our hope.
Before I leave and get my grade 12, I want to fight for those students who are going the same struggle and barriers like I did in my life.
I'm hoping that one day someone won't be deprived from having a higher education because he cannot afford the course.
Could I go ahead and shell out that $500 or $600? I could, yeah, but there's a lot of people that can't. And I just want them to have the same opportunities that I did. Thank you.
If you've been wondering, should you fix an appliance or chuck it, wonder no more. Take an appliance break with Chris Hilliker.
I'm Molly and I'm here with Chris Hilliker and we're going to take a break and talk about appliances. And Chris is a machine repairman of large appliances, washing machines, fridges, ovens, dryers. And I'm going to ask you a personal question right off the bat. Chris, what kind of washing machine do you have?
I have a Maytag Dependable Care that was made in 1980. Now it's 30 years old, so it still has 30 years left in its life because it was made to last 6 decades. And the first family that owned it were a family of 10. And they had the machine for 3 decades, running 24/7, and it never broke once, not once.
Now, do you have to treat this washing machine differently, or?
No, it was made to be bulletproof. When they sold that machine, the salesperson had a big heavy chain and he would slap the machine and say, this won't chip, it won't scratch, it won't dent, because it was made to last a lifetime.
Okay.
Over that life, you may replace a few small parts, but then you're not throwing away the whole machine, which really, that saves a lot of waste for the planet.
Now, how do I know if I'm looking at a machine that just it's not working for me anymore? How do I know it's worth keeping? And as a home owner, how do I know that it's worth the phone call to a repairman because I'm going to have to pay for them to even ring the doorbell, and that's a bit of a commitment. What do I get from having a repairman come over?
You get to know for sure what's wrong with it, how much it'll cost to fix, and that's important. Sometimes it's something very simple. I've been able to help people with free advice. They look on my website and see the tips, or maybe they email me and I give them some pointers, and then they find out, hey, my machine's not broken, I'm just adding too much detergent, or I need to stop putting coins in my pockets or something. Other times it could be something very, very simple. For example, when the door switch breaks on a dryer, the dryer won't heat and it won't tumble. So from a regular person's perspective, it looks pretty grim, but the cost to repair a little lid switch or door switch is much, much cheaper than buying a new machine. So sometimes if people just go ahead and make their own decision without professional advice, they could waste hundreds and hundreds of dollars. Not to mention getting rid of a perfectly good old machine that has decades of life left in it, and then taking a gamble, buying a new machine where, who knows, what if you get a lemon?
Let's talk about that quickly. New machines are sold to us with the promise of being energy efficient and being green. Now, what does that mean in the mechanics?
Well, okay, so the machines may use about 30% less water.
Yeah.
They will spin faster, so that removes more of that water from the clothes before they go in the dryer. Now that saves energy because the dryer's not running as long.
Yeah.
But because the chassis or the body structure of that machine was only made to last about 7 years, it means that it's going to end up in a landfill sooner or being recycled or scrapped sooner. So that generates more waste than appliances ever did before. On the old machines, you keep the whole machine and replace one little part. On the new machines, we get rid of the whole new machine, and it ends up making all this waste and costing people more money than appliances ever did for our parents or our grandparents.
Yeah, you want to pass that washing machine on in your will, it sounds like the one you have.
Yeah, the one I have, yeah.
Okay, well, we've been speaking with Chris Hilliker, who is helping me to look at my appliances a little bit differently and have a long-term relationship with them. And we will check in again. Cambie Appliance can be found online. Thanks for joining us. Thanks for all your common sense.
You may donate or recycle your appliances at any of the outlets below. And remember, you can send your questions directly to Chris on his Facebook page.
Our next guests are Sis and Senaqwila, mother and daughter. They've come in to share some traditional knowledge and help us to appreciate the world around us of wildcrafting. Here they are with Gunargie.
Today we have a mother and daughter in the studio with us, Sis Wyss and Senaqwila. Welcome to the show. They are both Polynesian, Squamish, Stalau with a touch of Swiss, and Senaqwila is Tsimshian. I'm very pleased to have them here today. They started off way back when, during the days of the community garden in Squamish, and then they were inspired to open their own tea house. And today we're here to talk about teas as a medicine and dandelions as coffee. Welcome to the show.
Thank you. Thank you, Gunargie.
Yeah. So tell us more about how you became inspired to open your own tea house.
Well, it really, I think the humble beginnings began when Senaqwila was pretty much a newborn, and I wanted to find a sustainable way of raising my daughter, and I wanted to do something that was very culturally focused. So I followed the powwow circuit, I followed craft fairs, blending teas and herbs, and I kept feeling like, wouldn't it be amazing to actually have an environment where people could just come in, and because all the different craft fairs I went to and powwows, people would say, hey, it's really great, but it'd be nice to try your tea. And, you know, the challenges in those environments are finding cables long enough to go out into the middle of a craft fair, and of course with about 30 tables or, 100 people running through there looking at things. It's very complicated to actually set something like that up and have people enjoy and focus on what tea is. So I've spent pretty much her whole lifetime imagining where could this be, where could I do this, and recently in my search for an art studio, I stumbled across this beautiful storefront, and as soon as I went in, I felt it. It was like the vision I've had all of her life came through this space.
So it's been a 21-year journey for you, and it's just beginning for you, right?
Yeah. Well, growing up, I've always learned, to me, like, when my friends would be like, oh, I have a headache, they would always be like, oh, just take Advil or like take this pill and like you'll be better. But for me, like I was never comfortable with like pharmaceutical drugs. Like I just found it, it wasn't really my solution for any kind of illness. Like if I had a headache when I was young or I had any kind of ailment, like lavender oil would really soothe me. And like we'd always, from my mom, I'd always have like a more like natural, holistic approach to health.
And then you're living in a traditional environment in Squamish, so that helped to grow, for you to grow as like a medicine woman in training, really, when you think about it, because that's what you are, right?
Well, when she was 5 years old, she was, and I was getting my name, our family was doing a naming ceremony, and I found out she was outside
Yeah.
walking people around from one plant to another and telling them what
Really?
berries they were, what they were for. And I was like, what? And we came out and there she had a little group of 5 people around her and she was showing things off. And I was like, wow, just when I wondered, is she paying attention? And at 5 years old, she was very focused, and having grown up with me taking her on as a baby in a backpack to a toddler walking with me to a young girl to a young woman, always gathering medicines. And as she said, like, I literally, from when I was pregnant through childbirth, through all of her different ailments that children go through, I used herbal medicines to help her with everything from, a common cold through bronchitis to chicken pox and measles. Everything was done with traditional medicines.
It seems to me like you've influenced each other in really obvious ways here.
Yeah.
Can you tell us what these herbs are that we have on the table?
Yeah, so we have a community garden in North Vancouver. It's on the Hemads-Kla-Lee-Lee village site, which is next to the Capilano River system near the Lionsgate Bridge. Do you want to talk about any of these? And we'll bounce off each other.
Sure.
Okay.
Which one would you like to talk about?
This is the yarrow, right?
Yep.
So this one is yarrow. It's really the woman's medicine, and I find that, especially as a young Indigenous woman, there's so many negative things I see of what my life should be as an Indigenous woman. Like, there's missing and murdered. There's just so many statistics that I feel that I don't fit into. And with the plants, it's really empowering, I find. It's good for all stages of women, starting from going through puberty. It's really good for strengthening the womb and strengthening your blood. So it's like for before you get puberty to when you are going through the menstrual cycle, it's also strengthening as well. And even for after menopause, it's strengthening for the women's cycle and builds iron.
Wow.
Yeah,
amazing.
Every step of the woman's life cycle yarrow is.
We only have a minute left here,
Oh.
so
Okay.
let's zip through this and then find out how we can contact the two of you and check out your website and support your tea house.
So we have comfrey, which is good, as the word sounds, comfrey. It's comforting. It's good for skin issues. This is mugwort. It's related to the sage family. It's one of the artemisias, related to desert sage. This one's for dream. If you lose your dreams, if you have nightmares. This is lemon balm, which I encourage you to smell and share what you smell.
Oh, heaven.
It's related to mint, and it's good for your stomach, but it's also a lot of these are these all can be used for skin salves. This is frog leaf, used for bug bites, bee stings. Mullein is, we use it in smudging for trauma, if you have trauma in your relationships, but we also use it for lungs, and it helps to release pain in the lungs.
Trauma in relationships? Really?
Trauma in relationships.
Wow.
We burn it as a smudge, and it
Okay.
helps us to talk. That's why it's good for that, because it takes a person
Releasing
that doesn't
the
talk.
emotion.
Yeah,
to
First Nations
releasing.
people can use this while we're building relationships with the government.
Yeah.
Tell us where we can get a hold of you and what your website is.
Okay, so my website is indigenousplantdiva.wordpress.com, and we are located at 1875 Powell Street. We are awaiting our name in the registration forms, so name to be announced soon. And you can email me at ceasefire66@gmail.com, so CEASEFIRE66@gmail.com.
Okay, thank you for joining us on Access TV. Cease Wyss and Senaqwila Wyss.
Heichka.
Gaelic-Kasla.
Awesome.
Oh, such abundance. It's so great to see a mother and daughter putting their heads together and having a cup of tea. If you would like to hang your art in that context, get in touch with Cease and Senaqwila Wyss right here.
Coming up in our community on May 1st, 2nd, and 3rd, Jane Walks are happening, which are free guided walks around the city and actually globally. Our own Molly is hosting one.
I'm going to learn how to host one. It's true. It's a storytelling opportunity that I will not miss out on. And there's also Hive for Humanity, isn't there?
That's right. It is bee season. Hive for Humanity has a new location. If you're up for learning some beekeeping, show up at 58 West Hastings and learn all about it.
And we're going to leave you with some images from our community announcements, as well as Adam Abrams and his latest Max and Me adventure as they traveled through the plant of Ocean Concrete's open house day last year on Granville Island. It's coming around again this year, the 26th of April. If you really want to know what goes into your concrete, now's the time.
Do you have a story to share with us? We care. Contact us on our Facebook page, Access Community Television, and let us be a platform for your story.
Tell us the truth. We're listening. I'm Molly Caron.
I'm Narges Mowlaee. Thank you for watching.
Thanks for joining us.
May 1st, International Workers' Day. Free barbecue, folk show, 7 p.m. Dance party, take the streets, 9 p.m. Grandview Park, May 1st, 2015. May Day. Celebrate resistance, freedom, and self-determination. May Day Cabaret with the Graham Partisans, Jeff Berner, and the Cosmic Winks. Friday, May 1st, 7:30 p.m. at Spartacus Books, 3378 Findlay, near Commercial and 18th. Tickets $15. Advance tickets at Spartacus Books or maydaycabaret.eventbrite.com. More May Day, the Social Justice Info Festival, with the Left Coast Labor Corps, the Creaking Planks, the Carnival Band, Solidarity Notes Labor Choir, Gross Domestic Product, and Resistors. 1 to 4 p.m. Saturday, May 2nd. 1000 to 1300 block of Commercial Drive near Grandview Park. Also, Paul Yi and Xiaoli Wang will launch their new book, Chinese Fairy Tale Feast, a literary cookbook. Free event at the Dr. Sun Yat-sen Classical Chinese Garden, 578 Carroll Street in Chinatown, Vancouver, on Sunday, May 3rd at 4 p.m.
Yeah.
Really fun, isn't it?
It sure is.
You do it. You do it.
I'll do it.